Dr Reena here. I'm a dental specialist and founder of RW Perio, located at 75 Harley Street. Welcome to my podcast, Life and Smile, where we talk about everything dental, lifestyle, business, and much more. Every episode, I'm joined in conversation with a specialist expert in their chosen field, who give us a behind-the-scenes glimpse into their daily regime, career turning points, and an insider look at what they can't live without. As a businesswoman myself, it's so inspiring to hear how people have built their careers and shattered those glass ceilings. So let's get the conversation going. Dr Reena here, back in our Harley Street recording studio, where I'm so delighted you have chosen to join us for what is going to be another hugely inspiring episode of Life and Smile, the podcast. I'm sitting here and already anticipating taking notes from our guest, who I'm so excited to introduce. Here across from me is Mark Kildea, who brings forward a wealth of career expertise with a background which has seen him build a highly acclaimed, decades-long real estate career. He is now, of course, Chief Executive at the 92-acre Howard de Walden Estate here in Marylebone, W1. Welcome to the podcast, Mark.
Good morning, Dr. Reena. It's great to be here. What a fantastic building you've got here and a great practice you've created. It's fantastic. Really pleased to be here.
Thank you so much for giving up your time. So we mentioned in the introduction your highly impressive business background and pathway to sort of where you are now. But talk us through sort of how your career has progressed and how it kind of all happened.
Yeah, I mean, you make it sound fantastic, highly impressive. I think I've just been around for a long time and managed to end up in the job that I'm in. No, I started off, I graduated in the late 80s, and at that point there was a real boom in financial services in the city. So I went into join a bank in international banking. But didn't stay that long, actually, in that role, and then realised that I wanted to, at that time, people were doing careers in accountancy and doing masters in business administration, and I wanted to go down a different route, and what I discovered was treasury, which probably means not a lot to your listeners, but what treasury is involved is big companies have a treasurer who basically finds the money for the company to go off and do big things. And that's where I sort of made my mark. So I sort of wanted to get into treasury. My ambition in life was to be a group treasurer, and you had to work in a big company to be a group treasurer. So I had no ambitions to didn't really see becoming a finance director, certainly didn't perceived to be seen to be becoming a chief executive, but it kind of happened, and I think because treasurers actually get a good insight to the direction, the strategy of a business, and actually that gives you that sort of that breadth of knowledge to move into those kind of roles. So that's how I sort of ended up being where I am. But I was a treasurer for 17 years, and one of the things I always say to staff who are always saying, I haven't been promoted this year, or I haven't, you have to take your time. These things will happen to you.
Patience is key.
Exactly.
What made you want to become a treasurer? What was it that attracted you to that role?
Because if in most businesses, most people work on the what I call the turnover side of the business can have thousands of people in it, but the treasury department, if you look at a large business like Marks and Spencer, the treasury department will probably be 10 to 20 people. Right. But you're looking after the other side of the business, of the balance sheet, all of the debt, all of the cash, all of the foreign exchange. And I thought you were handling, it was big money, lots of pressures and challenges, and I thought that was incredibly interesting. And what property does is property tends to have a lot of debt-related matters you have to finance. So I enjoyed dealing with the banks and basically funding the business. And I worked in a very small team. I was only in 4 or 5 in the business I was in. So that's what I liked. I felt that autonomy and that influence on the direction of the business was really, really important. So that's why I enjoyed it.
Amazing. And then you stepped up to the CEO role as well. Do you enjoy it just as much? Because obviously, I guess you're seeing it from a different perspective. You're sitting in a different seat. How is that?
Yeah, I mean, interestingly, I was appointed during 2020, and it was not a great time to step up to become the CEO role. And at that point, I actually had 3 jobs in 1 year because I was the finance director. I got promoted to chief operating officer, and I thought that was my dream job because there I was giving all of the kind of operational aspects of the business, running the finance, and someone else was dealing with all of the property. And then I stepped up. I was asked after 6 months in that role to be interim CEO. So it was a challenge because I've just naturally found what I thought would be my end role, and then was given the opportunity to become CEO. I was on a panel with Natalie Campbell, who's running for London Mayor, and she said that she wanted to be a CEO at the age of 15. And I said, I didn't want to be a CEO at the age of 50, never mind 15. But it was amazing that she had that foresight and planning, and that's what, she didn't even know what a CEO did, but she just said, that's what I want to be. That's the number one person. I just want to get there. I wasn't really naturally driven in that way, but I'm enjoying it. It's been a challenge, and it still remains a challenge, but it's one that I enjoy, yes.
And the landscape of business and real estate is constantly evolving, and you mentioned kind of when you took your role, obviously the pandemic's happened, so many different things to juggle with. What's over the years been your kind of favourite personal project to get involved in, or any business events that's really stood out? Because it must be quite varied. Yeah,
it is, and I'll pick a couple that are maybe good examples. So I love, in terms of, we work with buildings and we redevelop. We don't actually construct anything in Marylebone from new, because we work with amazing buildings like the one that we're currently in. But what I love is when you're able to marry the kind of old with the new. So one of my favourite developments, and I don't know if you know this one, is in Wimpole Street, which is where the Royal Brompton are.
Yes.
You know, I think that's a stunning development, one of my favourites, because it's sort of, if you look at the front of it, you can see there's a lot of, been a lot of redevelopment to the front of the building, but it fits in seamlessly, effortlessly with what's around there. So that would be one of my favourite developments, although I wasn't responsible for it, but I kind of oversaw it, which was great. And then I think that the big thing that's been happening in real estate and how it's transforming is it's becoming much more operational. So it used to be that we were very much the landlord. We did these long leases, and people came in for 10, 20 years, particularly in healthcare and medical leases, and we didn't really get that involved with the buildings. That's all changing now. Okay. So one of the things that the office is transforming to become, the expert landlords now have to be hospitality driven, they have to be customer services driven. And that's a challenge for us as a business, and we've teamed up with an organisation called SpaceMade, who manage some of our buildings. They're still Howard de Walden buildings, and the reason for that is that it's slightly outside our comfort zone in terms of delivering that world-class hospitality, technology, and customer service. So we're working them, and we've got a product called Elm Tree. Now, Elm Tree is really significant for us in Marylebone because it's our logo for Marylebone Village, and Elm Tree is I don't know if you know about the Elm Tree, but one of the few surviving elm trees in London is on Marylebone High Street. It's a fantastic specimen, didn't succumb to Dutch elm disease, and it's a great symbol of kind of durability, sustainability, and just the ultimate survivor. So that's why we called it Elm Tree, and I think this is something that we're going to bring across our portfolio and create those more kind of operationally focused real estate office products.
Oh, how interesting. I didn't know that about the Elm Tree. Great. In terms of kind of looking back on your career, and you mentioned earlier at the start in terms of having that patience, which I do agree nowadays everyone wants to kind of move quickly. Is there any other advice, if you kind of looking back to your younger self or anyone sort of embarking on a similar career, what would you say to them, as well as patience, what would be the key things?
Okay, so I get asked this question. We do a lot of engagement with the University of Westminster, and the kids there ask questions. We get involved. And I always say to them, don't overthink it. You'll probably work 2 or 3 it'd be 2 or 3 jobs before you find what you really enjoy. They feel under pressure to make that first step that's going to actually give them everything that they want in their whole life and their whole career. And I say, you go off and make mistakes, go and find 2 or 3 jobs, and actually you'll find something that you probably really like or you're passionate about. And so I would say passion. We talked about patience. I would say passion because, sometimes people say, well, who gets paid a lot of money? That's the job I want. But actually, if you do something that you're passionate about, you'll do it well, and the money will follow. Or the claim, or you could be a scientist who unlocks something or discovers something. Doesn't necessarily make a fortune, but in terms of what the contribution you make, that is absolutely fantastic and really fulfilling in terms of your career. So I would say, be patient, find what your passion is, and then go for it. And Yeah, and the other advice I would say is start a pension early and look after your teeth.
Good point. Thank you. Yes, I completely agree with that advice. No, I think that's good. That's really good advice, and I think and also not overthinking it and seeing what the next step brings. Because as you said, you weren't aware that you were going to be CEO. That wasn't on your agenda, but it happened, and you really enjoy it. So
I think good things happen if you to I would say good people, but to people who work hard and do good things, it will come. And I think that's the message I would say to young people, because they, I remember time sort of moves more slowly when you're younger, and you want success, and you want to have the nice things in life like a house and a car, and it's important to get promoted and to be seen to do well. But actually, I think you've got to look at your career as a lot. I mean, I've been working 37 years. You do have to be quite patient to get to these more senior roles, and I'm an exemplar of that, I guess.
Yeah, in it for the long term.
Exactly.
So in terms of sort of, you've worked with lots of different teams, and you surround yourself with ambition-inspiring teams, and of course your growing a network is really key across multiple industries. How do you keep that inspiration? How do you drive success? Because you are an industry leader, you're dealing with multiple different types of people and teams. What's been the key to success in that?
Okay, I think it was a stretch for me. When I stepped up to become chief executive, the one thing that you've got to do is let go of the bits of the business that you did well before. Because, what's the point of hiring a competent FD if you then step on their toes all the time? So you need to let go, but then branch off into what do you want to. So you need to create the strategy, you need to have the vision, you need to encourage others, you need to lead, you need to be sort of part of the team, but you need to lead the team as well. They want you to, you need to do some of the heavy lifting. You need to show people the way. And I think that's really what I've tried to do. I've tried to say, where do I think the business is going to be in 5, 10, 20 years' time? What's the changing landscape for healthcare? How's that going to affect our business? How can I position the business in the best place possible to deal with that? I think I love the phrase. I don't know if this is true or not, but I just love it, that the Canadian definition of leadership is the idea of the ice being broken by the leadership. So leadership, so you show the trail that others can follow in, and I think that's what I don't know if it's true or not, but it just sounds wonderful, doesn't it? It should be true.
It does sound wonderful.
So I think that's the definition of leadership: is like you break the ice, you take others with you, and so you have to do that. You have to be the leader, but it's important that you take that team with you.
In terms of letting go, that's a really key point, and I sometimes actually personally find that difficult, because you want to be involved in every little kind of detail of the business and want to make sure everyone's doing a good job. How did you develop that skill to let go? What do you just, because you still want to care about it, but how do you get that balance?
I think it is difficult. You've got to recruit somebody. You've got to make a good appointment. That you trust the person and you test them out. But actually, what I did was I actually hired somebody whose skills were kind of complementary to me in a way.
Yes.
So I could help him, but he actually had experience in areas that I didn't necessarily have. And I think you build good teams by naturally having different sets of skills. But yes, what I did as I realised I need to get embraced with, I run the HR function now. I'm not necessarily an HR specialist. I lead on sustainability. I'm not necessarily a sustainability expert, but you need to let go of the finance aspects. You need to let go of the operational aspects. You need to let go of the property aspects. But you're still involved, but someone else is managing that, and you're overseeing it. You've got an overarching view. But you need to then embrace the bits that the business is expecting you to run with.
Yes,
they want me to lead the team and run the team and show the direction and the vision, deal with strategy, all of that aspect. So I think there was a gap to be filled. So I jumped in there and had to, in order to do it well, I had to sort of leave those elements behind, or else I would have failed. I would have been too thinly spread and wouldn't have done a good job at anything.
Makes sense. In the same respect, obviously, you've also, met lots of different individuals, teams over the years. What would you say then has been those traits that has made the most successful businesses and brands that you've worked with?
Okay, in Marylebone, I think so I'm going to use the word passion again. People who are passionate about their business, but also what we have on our estate as businesses that are quite unique and quite quirky. But not just, uniqueness is part of it, but you actually you have to have a compelling product at the end of it. So, so some of the successful businesses that I can think of, just a couple of examples. So there's a business called Random 42 on our estate. Now they are experts in medical animation. So they combine the top artists with PhD scientists and top programmers, and they build this amazing product which they sell to the partner. They do business with the largest 25 pharma companies in the world. They're a global leader in what they do. So that's an example to say quite unique, but it needs to be backed up by a compelling product.
Yes.
And they do that well. A couple of others. I think a new business we've introduced to the estate, who you sat on the panel with Kerry, Ori, dealing with eating disorders. They've got a great, unique proposition. They recognise that everybody's problem's slightly different.
Yes.
They want early interventions, and also what they try and do is they teach. They teach others. They want to sort of say, we found this out, this works. So they will actually reach out to their community and beyond, and actually try and make that problem, try and help make that problem a lesser one. And then lastly, I would say on the Lena stores, because why is Lena store? That's, to me, that was a great spot, but we never actually had the right occupier there.
That changed a few times, didn't it?
Exactly, it changed a few times, and we couldn't understand why it didn't work. And then you've got Lena there, so that's an example of, I think you go in there and it's evocative of a busy, bustling Italian trattoria.
Yes.
I love the colours. She's got that pistachio green. It's just a great environment to be in, and it's so busy that I can never even get a reservation there. So they're doing something incredibly well.
Yeah. No, that used to be my route on the way back home, and it's always busy, which is amazing. The point of Kerry, we're actually having coffee with her next week, which shows she's up for collaborating and working with the community in Harley Street, which I think that's one of the benefits of being here. You get to really work together with other medical professionals and help each other, and help, at the end of the day, our patients as well, which is great.
Absolutely. And I think what used to happen was people felt they were in competition. But they now see much more benefit in being collaborative and linking up and finding opportunities where they can both share, which I think is a great idea.
Completely. And one of the things that has changed as well over the years is obviously social media and digitalization, and everyone's kind of need for that instant access, fast-paced sort of content, which multiple industries are using across the globe, and of course in Harley Street. How do you utilize it at Howard de Walden in terms of social media? Do you feel that's been an important part, or not so much?
It's an increasingly important part. I mean, so what we have is a sort of what I call our business-to-consumer platform is Marylebone Village. So Marylebone Village is a sort of showcase of the lifestyle that you can have in Marylebone. It highlights the retail, the leisure, the hospitality, and I think it's. I don't know if you're a subscriber, but it's excellent.
I am indeed.
It really
excellent.
is.
Yeah.
It's fantastic, and we've got over 35,000 users.
Yes.
And then the other piece we do is obviously we want to talk about real estate, we want to talk about our developments, we want to talk about the company, more the Howard de Walden side of it. That's dealt with on LinkedIn. So we tend to have, we've got about a bit less. We've got 7,000 followers on LinkedIn,
Still impressive.
Which reveal well, it's not too bad, but it reveals to me that actually people are much more interested on things that they can buy and eat than they are in maybe their real estate buildings. But anyway, there we are.
It's a lifestyle approach, I guess. You need everything. So,
exactly.
Going back to sort of your career to date, and you've told us about your journey. You told us sort of what you would say to your younger self. What would be your proudest moment to date, would you say? Is it the CEO role, or would it be something else?
So, two things I mentioned. Back in 2009, in the financial crisis, I was with a company that was really financially stretched, and we managed to navigate them through that by renegotiating all of our banking agreements and raising equity. That was really quite an achievement, because at that point we actually thought the business would probably be lost. So that was quite an opening, and it probably gave me the confidence to, because shortly after then I joined the Howard de Walden Estate in 2011. So it kind of gave me that confidence that I did something that I was proud of. I did something that was good. It was high quality, and it was something I can look back and feel incredibly proud of. But I guess at Howard de Walden, it would be navigating the business through COVID. We were out of our building on Queen Anne Street.
Yes.
We were temporarily in Baker Street.
Yes.
Everything was all over the place. Every sector was affected in different ways. There was shutdowns, the restrictions, and I think that I stepped into the role then, so it just seemed to be to get the business through it in the state it's currently in, and actually everyone within the business being sort of healthy and getting through that was probably the most. I would say that would be the proudest achievement I've had at Howard de Walden.
No, for sure. I know. I remember when we got the building, we had one of our first meetings at the Baker Street office. So, no, your building now is absolutely incredible. So,
Thank you.
It's always a pleasure to walk past and visit. And what keeps you sort of on a daily basis? You've got lots of sort of teams to deal with, a very important role, different businesses you work with. What keeps you kind of going? What keeps you inspired? Do you have a mentor you turn to, or something you read, or what? Because you always have to kind of be enthusiastic to ensure the rest of your team are as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think I keep informed. I don't actually have... mentoring seems to be a thing that's becoming more prevalent over the last 10 to 20 years. When I started out my career, no one had mentors. There was this idea of mentoring, but it's really positive because it sort of it points people in the right direction. It shows them the way to unlock their career and move on. So I don't actually have. I mean, I'm an avid reader of lots of periodicals and business publications, not just in real estate, but I have a huge interest in politics and business history. So I kind of keep as informed as I can, but I don't have somebody who I slavishly listen to. I mean, if in terms of podcasts, it's great to be doing. But my favourite one is The Rest is History and The Rest is Politics. I love those two guys who do The Rest is History. I want to be in that room with them. They're just so interesting. They're so funny. They're so engaging. So I don't really have one single mentor as such, but just a general interest in business, curiosity about life.
Yeah, absolutely.
That in general, it keeps you going. I think that keeps me motivated.
For sure. And I'm sure kind of one of the most inspiring things actually for me and working in this area is the history behind the buildings as well. And literally when you're walking up and down the street, you're like, wow, someone, very important was here before. And even in our building, we had William Gladstone, who's a former Prime Minister, actually was here. And I think one of Charles Darwin's contemporaries. So it's amazing to walk into a building thinking, wow, what is the history of this? And we are now occupying it. I mean, you know the estate very, very well. Can you give us other few examples of notable figures and occupants over the years?
Yeah, I can. So this is quite a famous building. You've mentioned the two. And you could almost do your own podcast on the history of Marylebone or Harley Street. So you've got not too far away from here at 90 Harley Street. That's where Florence Nightingale was involved with our first hospital. I think she wasn't there for very long, and it was it was a hospital for gentlewomen. Not gentlemen, gentlewomen. But she was very passionate then, and she wanted to have trained nurses because nurses were only trained by sort of Christian orders, or it was this non-secular training, and she really wanted to try and do it. I don't think they actually did that at 90 Harley Street because she was then sent to Crimea. But when she came back, she did. She opened up her first training hospital down at St Thomas's. So she was at 90 Harley Street. You had obviously the famous one. There's the King's Speech. Lionel Logue was at 146. He was a speech therapist, which everybody. If you haven't seen the film, then it's a great film and you should watch it. But some of the ones you might not be so familiar with is a lady called Octavia Hill. I don't know if you know. She was a social reformer, and she was one of the first people behind social housing, which was started in Marylebone. Right. If you go to the street, I think is Garbett Place, and they have the blue plaque there. Okay. Now, she's a fascinating woman because she was actually one of the first members of the National Trust, and she was one of the people who was passionate about protecting green spaces, and she was very influential about protecting some of the parks around, not Regent's Park, but beyond in London, and actually it was so important for her to do that. So she was an incredibly visionary lady. But the most interesting character is James Smithson, who was behind this. You've heard of the Smithsonian Institute in the US. So he lived part of his life in Bentinck Street. And I find his story fascinating because he left his wealth effectively to create to the United States because he thought it was the land of discovery. And actually, when you think of what the Smithsonian, if you've been to Washington and all of the museums are all Smithsonians, he lived in Bentinck Street. And I don't know if you know the story, but he actually, when he died, the reason his wealth, he left it to, he didn't have children, he left it to his nephew, but he said if his nephew didn't have any children, it would go to the United States, and his nephew died 5 years afterwards without having any children. He was then buried in somewhere in Italy. He died abroad and was buried in somewhere in Italy. And Alexander Graham Bell had discovered the telephone. He actually arranged for his body to be taken from Italy in the very early 1900s to the US, and he's buried in the Smithsonian Castle, which sits on the National Mall. So having never been to America, he's actually ended up there.
Right.
So I think that's one of the most fascinating stories.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Amazing. Wow. So much history. So a few questions. Just, we spoke about your kind of working as a team, your leadership. Day to day, are you sort of based in London, in the office here? What's your kind of day-to-day setup?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty much in London 4 or 5 days a week. Occasionally I do the odd day at home where I'm having to write my board reports or strategy or things like that. But I this is a business that you need to be on the ground, where every building that we have is within a 15-minute walk. So it's great to get out there, to see as many buildings, to meet as many customers as I can, to be here, to catch up with the senior team. I might meet with non-executive directors, the chairman, sometimes family members and trustees. So that's what sort of keeps me busy. But I'm here all the time. But I don't have a standard day. I mean, I remember once I did an interview for Estates Gazette, and I said, who are these people that get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, cycle 30 miles, bake bread, and then get to the office? I don't quite do that, but I try to have it. Every week is slightly different, but there's definitely a lot of uniformity about what I do. But I try, and health is important. I try and keep fit. Having said, I don't get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, do 30 miles. I might get up a little bit later than that and do 5.
Still impressive.
But I do try and keep fit. I think that's important, and you realise that as you get older, that you wish you had done a bit more when you were younger.
No, for sure. Looking after yourself, definitely I can relate to, and gum health and everything else, because, I mean, I always say to people, we do some teaching as well, if you don't look after yourself, you can't look after your patients either. So I guess the same thing, you can't do a job well if you're not in good shape. So completely. I'm going to finish with one question we always ask our guests, which I always find very intriguing. So 3 things we can find at your desk that help you thrive during the day. What's part of your sort of survival kit?
Well, I guess you're not looking at laptop and pens, and that would be a bit boring. So one of them is a bit water. You will always find water. Okay. If you've ever suffered from kidney stones, which I have, then you will always have water at your desk. Second thing is it'll be either a snack or paracetamol. In case I get a bit low on my, I feel my energy level's a bit low, I'll have a snack, and sometimes it can be paracetamol if it's a bad day.
Oh no.
Exactly, not too much though. But the one that I think you will find quite curious is I'm kind of at that age where I have those kind of gaps in my teeth that are a little bit wide. And I do, so this is not a genuine put on, I do genuinely have dental picks and floss on my desk, because when you rush back from lunch and you've got a meeting with someone, you don't want to get in there with those sesame seeds and stuck between your teeth.
Highly annoying.
So it's really annoying. So that is one that actually is quite interesting, I think, from your perspective. But I do always have those on my desk.
I think incidental cleaning is absolutely key. So correct answer.
Thank you.
Mark, thank you so much for your time. I know you're super busy. Thanks for fitting us in. It's great to have you here on Harley Street. I'm sure all the listeners, including myself, found it a super inspirational conversation. So thank you for sharing. And we'd hope to have you back again soon.
Thank you, Dr. Reena. It's great to be here. I'd be delighted to come back. Thank you.